because they look more beautiful.
Yeah, do that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. So this is a very special one. Oh, it sounds like I might have an echo. Have I got an echo? Can you hear an echo? Is it right?
I'm not hearing an echo.
Okay. Well, if you're watching this, if you can let me know if there is an echo, that would be cool. And if so, I'll have to get some headphones if that's the case. But I don't normally need it. Oh, actually, I need to turn that off. That might help. But yeah, this is a very special one because basically I spoke to Matt, who you can see on screen, a while ago about doing a live stream where he could talk about his books. Oh, that's good. Thanks for telling me that. We've known each other for nearly 20 years. Don't know if you know that, Matt, but it's been nearly 20 years.
I know, it's mad, isn't it? It really all came back to me when I found that Orpheus Records bag the other day. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah.
Actually, that's a good point. It'll be more than that. It'll be more than 20 years. It will probably be, a lot more than that. Thinking about it, I was thinking about when we were kind of jamming together and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But no, so
you were really funny in Orpheus Records. I used to come in and I used to kind of, come to buy stuff from you. And I remember I bought you were telling me about the complete Mozart. I actually ended up buying the complete Mozart years later from another company. But just hilarious, the stuff you were telling me. So yes, really cool.
So I used to work in a record shop. I was there for 11 years actually, and that is how I initially met Matt. And you used to work down the road, didn't you? A few doors down, was selling rare books, didn't you?
No.
Oh, I think you corrected me on this a few months ago. I've forgotten. Yeah, go on. What was you just used to go there a lot? Is that what it was?
I was selling rare books, and I still do. Bill, who used to run Academy Books, I used to be in there all the time buying off of him because he had stuff that was like 500, 600, 700 years old. And it's like, I'll have some of that. I mean, his place was crazy. You go into this bookshop, this secondhand bookshop, and all downstairs, it was all just rubbish. It was all really kind of ordinary, just, paperbacks and stuff like this. And then after I've been there a little while and he got to know me, he said, you can go upstairs. And I'm like, I didn't know that. And this is a 3-story Georgian house, right? So these really narrow stairs, like he points me to this door behind a curtain, or this doorway behind a curtain. I start to go up it and the steps are about this wide, okay? And every step is loaded with books. Just like, ancient, really old stuff. Yeah. And you're going up the stairs and you pick something up and it would say Biblia Sacra and you look at the date and it's 1520. I mean, absolutely insane. So you get into the first room, and because he was a kind of theology specialist, but he did other stuff as well, but his thing was theology. You get into the first room and it was piled with folios. You know what that means, a folio? It's like a large volume. It'd be piled up with them. You kind of pick one off and it'd be like 1700s works of Martin Luther or something like that, or Fox's Book of Martyrs. It was just insane. The whole thing was extraordinary. And then at the very top room, at the very, very top, there was like a corner that was totally dedicated, like just completely stacked up with first editions of Charles Dickens. Now, Charles Dickens was born in Portsmouth. So, that's why he did it. He bought these books in, specifically to kind of like have that Portsmouth resonance. And it was magical. You will never find another place like it because the prices weren't stupid as well. He basically went, oh, well, it's a folio, because he'd get this stuff at auction or he'd get it from like other, dealers or whatever. And he'd go, oh, yeah, this is like 15 inches tall. That'll be 100 quid. That's how he used to do it. Like, go, well, it's 15 inches tall, 100 quid for that one. That's like, it's 300 years old, mate. Okay, I'll take it.
So you used to get the stuff that was that old and sell those onward, did you?
Yeah, I started off on eBay, selling on eBay. What happened was that we're sort of talking about books in the roundabout, aren't we?
Yeah.
What happened was that I was teaching English in Egypt for a while, and I came back and I didn't have a job over here, So I'd realised I had 4,000 American, Marvel DC comics in my attic that I collected when I was a kid, and I thought, oh, I'll sell them on eBay. And this was when eBay just started.
Yeah, it would have been early days.
Yeah, really early days. So this was about 2002, 2001, 2002. That's when I knew you back then. So that is a long time. And I think I knew you before that as well, from when you were in Orpheus Records. So, because I
was in there from 1991.
Yeah. So no, I knew you from before then. So the earliest point of contact is 22 years ago. But the earliest looking backwards. But I know that I was in there before seeing you as well. So so I started. I looked online and I couldn't find anything. The stuff that I had was just standard American comics, and they weren't particularly valuable. So, but I did realise that Tolkien at the time, there was the movies were about to come out, and Tolkien, the prices had gone mad online, but local book dealers who weren't online didn't know. So what I did was I just got in the car and I drove around Hampshire buying Tolkien. And and I buy it for like £2 or £3, these sets of Lord of the Rings, and then
hustling Lord of the Rings.
I had one where I paid £2 for a very early Tolkien glossary, Middle Earth, from 1922, with a glossary of Old English or Middle English, from about 1926 actually, with a fine dust wrapper, absolutely extraordinary. I paid £2 for it, and I sold it the next day for 600. I mean, it was insane.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
And the money, because there was no PayPal, they often went to America, and the Americans just, my customers just put like wads of cash into envelopes and sent it to me, and I'd be opening these wads. Just insane.
That's amazing.
That's when I knew you. I mean, it was tough. It was a tough life. I was up at 4 every morning going to car boot sales and stuff like this, but it was really interesting.
Yeah. So we'll go on to the question of how you went from doing all that to writing in a second. But just to kind of a bit of continuity with the stuff we're doing on the channel, I'll tell everyone about what I've been reading, and maybe if you've been reading something, you can tell us about that as well.
Sorry, I've disrupted your.
No. This is awesome. No. This is today's about you, but I just
cool.
I'll do this just to kind of like start it off, if you like. So I've just finished a hard case crime book by Lawrence Block. Do you know Lawrence Block? It's kind of like pulpy.
I don't, but I love that. I said to you, I saw that cover online. I love it.
Wow, yeah, it was good. It was good. It was very it's kind of on the one hand cliche, and on the other hand unpredictable, because like the way it ended, you wouldn't expect it, but it had lots of the tropes in there. So yeah, it's a bit of fun. That was good. And for the Historathon, I've started to read The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs.
Okay.
Which is really good. Straight away, it's written in a quite an entertaining way, because obviously books like this can be a bit dry. But yeah, that's really good. And I don't know if you know about this, but there's a project that's going to start this year about banned books.
Okay.
Some of us are reading banned books, and I've started with Wizard of Oz.
Wow, I didn't know that was banned. How come that's banned?
Well, it's probably because it's kind of magical, and I'm not sure. It's definitely not.
Where's it banned?
Somewhere in America.
Right, probably Bible Belt. Okay, I get you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of the list of banned books that we're working from is stuff that's been banned in America.
Okay. Yeah, I know that Mouse was banned recently.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. That is a tale about beating Nazism. Why on earth would you ban that? It's just insane.
Yeah, it really is insane. My dog's about to make everything topple over. That's good. He avoided everything. Well done, Ralph. That whole thing about banned books is quite interesting, because most of the list that I looked at were just absolute classics. The things that you would recommend to read, the things that you could study, the things that there's all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't ban them, like besides the reasons that they're getting banned are ridiculous, but they're the sort of books you should be encouraged to read. So it's just crazy.
I mean,
So we're looking
there's
at,
something else. There's something else as well, isn't there? Which is that, you know, there's also the kind of controlling of reading by designated reading age, and that's something else that also really hacks me off. Because when I was a kid, I was reading, you know, like at the age of 7 and 8, I was reading. Yeah, I was reading the Lord of the Rings when I was 7, and you know, and I was reading stuff from all over the place by the time I was about 9 or 10. I mean, you know, I read Goethe's Faust when I was about 12. I mean, you know, that's not in the German, but just because it got mentioned, just because it got mentioned in a Stranglers song, and I was just like, oh, I wonder what that is. And then I found one at a car boot sale or a jumble sale for 5p, and I thought, oh, well, all right, I'll read that. So I did. Didn't understand half of it, but the fact is that it was there and available, and I think the whole, like, you know, and it's enriching, isn't it? You know?
yeah. And you're right. If you've got a load of books there that aren't going to be offered to a certain age of kid because they're not that age yet, and they're, or, you know, they're just, it's seen as it's too beyond them, then yeah, you're not gonna know that because you're not being offered it. So
no, I know, and it, you know, the thing is, it pushes boundaries, and there are some kids who can read it. They'll be able to read it and they'll get it, and you know, although, you know, they'll understand enough for it to have sparked a passion in them or an interest. So, you know, so that's also, you know, I have a real thing about reading age stuff, you know, about it being classified by reading age, or not so much that, but that you go in and you're told as a kid that you can't read anything from the adult section because, you know, whereas if you had a, you know, this is in a library, you know, yeah, whereas if you had a good, and many librarians will do this, a good engaged librarian who will kind of go, well, I think this one would be right for you. And to help guide and form. I mean, that's an amazing thing. So yeah,
there are quite a lot of passive librarians, isn't there? But it should be quite an important part of their role, isn't it, to introduce you to things and be that kind of conduit.
I think a really good librarian, rather than just, I mean, and some library assistants as well, actually, are great. But you know, you get ones who, you know, who don't really, well, they're not, they're only there to get their wage, and they're not really engaged with it in the way that they could be. But that's, you know, I don't want to slag libraries off because they are absolutely the life, so important in so many ways, you know. You know, so I don't want to get negative about them. I mean, but there are occasionally, you know, there are some rules that are set by the people that, you know, are higher ups going, so yeah.
I mean, that's also the thing with the shop, the Orpheus Records, that, you know, one of the nice things about it was that I got to know the customers, and if someone came in going, oh, they would have liked that thing that came in yesterday, I'd tell them about it. And you know, smaller shops can do that, can't they? So
yeah, you were fantastic as a you know, with customers, you were fantastic. I just remember I used to go in there like looking forward to your service because you were fantastic. So yeah, there you go. That's my ego sort of polishing for the day there.
Right, the rest of it's about your ego. I'll tell you what, we've had a couple of comments. So we've had
all of it's about my ego.
So it began as a mistake. It said no echo, so that's brilliant. Thanks a lot for your help, because I noticed that earlier, so that really did help. And then reading is like breathing. It says hello, librarian here. So there we go. Yeah. So where are you from? Are you UK or US? I'm not sure. I don't think I know your channel. I'll check your channel out later. Reading's like breathing. So let us know where you're based, and if you've had any issues with the libraries changing their stock, you know, not having certain books, or it'll be interesting to know that. Oh, Aruba! Wow, awesome.
Where's Aruba?
That's South America, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm going to Google it.
I think it's South America.
That's so cool.
Pretty sure. Yeah, and the Readers Like Reading doesn't have a channel. That's fair enough. So yeah, let us know what it's like in Aruba, because that's awesome. And let me know if I'm right. It's South America. I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, off the coast of Venezuela.
Yeah. Oh well.
Awesome.
You get the general knowledge points for today.
It's Dutch Caribbean. Wow. Brilliant. So yeah, let us know what your if it could be that you've never encountered anything like that anyway, but you might say, yeah, there is a thing with libraries that we can't have certain books, or it's a recent thing maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I think banning has been going on for, I mean, for a while. It's just, for me, it strikes me as really odd that America is really full onto its freedom of speech stuff, and at the same time is banning books. That's, I find, really peculiar.
Yeah. And it seems to be ramped up recently, because a lot of these books, you look them up and they've recently been discussed in schools, and should they be in the schools, and a lot of that list is actually LGBTQ stuff. So it's that sort of culture war that's happening as well.
I know, the culture wars are just so boring. They're so tedious. It's just like, oh, for goodness sake, just grow up a bit.
It's really I'm finding it, because whenever I just do general searches on YouTube, it's just so negative all the time. And all these commentators and influencers, spokespeople are actually just saying really uninventive, boring things about things that have been said to death that aren't progressive at all, and it is really boring.
It's just absolutely. Do you know, I finally got off Twitter the other day. I just left it, but for exactly that reason. It's just like, I'm not going to call it what he's called it now. It was always Twitter to me, and I just kind of reached a point where I just thought, you know what, it's all just so miserable here. So I'm on Blue Sky now. Do you know Blue Sky? Yeah,
I don't know Blue Sky.
Okay,
I don't know. I tell you what, I don't know Blue Sky because I'm living in England.
Okay. Yeah, blimey, today there. Yeah, no, it was set up by, what's his name, Jack Dorsey, who set up Twitter, and it was a sort of a, from what I understand, it was a sort of a an experiment to try and get around the kind of worst kind of aspects of Twitter, the sort of the confrontational stuff, and also to give more control to the people there. And it started off, I joined when there was 50,000 members. I mean, it had nothing. But what happened was that when Elon Musk took over Twitter, that then separated off and became its own thing. And it had 50,000 members. And basically, it's like everyone just basically saw Neil Gaiman everywhere because he was like the hugest, biggest, most massive, star on there. And so basically everyone followed him, and he got, it reached a point though with him where I actually saw the tweet where one day he said, I'm just reaching the point now where I can't answer everyone's, well, not tweet, but post, where I can't answer everyone's post. So, if I miss you, I'm not being rude, and it's okay to ask again. He is so extraordinary with his fan base. It's just
amazing. Yeah. He's a really. I had the pleasure of having a conversation with him when he did the Guildhall talk.
Oh, you told me this is about Coraline.
Yeah.
No, it was the,
it was about there was two that came out, Ocean at the End of the Lane and Suddenly the Milk. Yeah.
But it was sorry, I cut you off. You go.
No, I was going to say he was just such a lovely guy. You could tell, and he stayed and talked to people for ages. And you definitely got that vibe that it wasn't put on.
But he signed that book for you. That was his second ever book, wasn't it? The one that was the Mickey take of all the terrible writing.
Yeah. That was funny. He was like, "You've got that?" He was quite shocked that I had it. So that was cool. So Reading is Like Breathing has replied and said the only restriction we have is budget and availability in Dutch.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So, so we've established that we met with these thing where you were selling books and I was selling records.
Yeah.
So at some point you decided to start writing, and you've written tons now. So how did that happen?
Oh my God, you've really asked for a long story.
So I've got biscuits here. I'll get my biscuits.
All right, fair enough. So I don't want to bore your listeners. So I'm going to try and keep it. Can't try and keep it. But actually, what happened was that I actually started writing. Are you laughing? Oh God, are you all right there? Right.
It's like half a biscuit. That was too much.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But yes, it's your job to bore the listeners anyway, isn't it? It's a good job I've known you a long time. So I actually started professionally writing when I was 23. So long time back, because I used to write for a TV show called The Bill.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And what happened was that I landed that just before I went to university. So I would do a script every year whilst I was at university in the summer holidays, and then go back to university just like flush with cash and have a really good time. and then do another script in the summer. You know, it's good summer work, I've got to tell you. But by the end of my degree, I'll be, you know, let's be honest about it, I had really bad depression. I was struggling with depression, and I was contracted in to write 4 more scripts for The Bill, and it's national TV. You know, it's a really major deal. And basically, my depression just got in the way, and what should have been a 6-month contract took 4 years to do. And it was a nightmare. I just squeezing every episode out. So once I finished that contract, I just walked away. I needed to sort my head out. So I did all sorts of other stuff. I worked as I worked in a bowling alley. I worked as a teacher in Egypt. Teaching English. I did computer repairs. I used to, back in those days, because there wasn't really an internet, or just the beginning of the internet. What I'd do is I'd write advertisements, because I'd sort of for some reason mastered the art of repairing and building computers. I could just do it by feel. It's like, you know, sort of instinct. And what I do is instinct, yeah, that ancient tribal instinct of PC repairs. And
you just put on like special shows where you'd be blindfolded and just build a computer.
Absolutely. So what happened was that I would get on my bicycle and I had to cut, you know, postcards, and I put them in post office windows, and then and I cycled all around sort of like South Hampshire doing this. And people would ring me up and go, I saw your advertisement. Can you come and fix my computer? And then I'd just get on my bicycle and literally cycle over and repair their computer. And yeah, hilarious, really, really strange and interesting time. And that's actually when I found out about eBay. I went to this guy who said, "Oh my God, you've got to sort out my computer for me." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And he said, "Well," he said, "it's all crashed, and what's happened is that you know, I'm selling on this new website, and you know, I'm buying postcards for 10p at car boot sales, and they're selling for 90 quid, and I've got customers waiting for me, and blah blah blah." Anyway, so I fixed the computer, and he gave me cash, and I said to him, "Oh dear," I said, "I better, you know," I said, "You sure you're happy to give me cash?" He said, "Oh yes." And then he let slip that he's a tax man. He actually worked for the tax office. And I looked at him and I said, "I hope you're declaring all this stuff on eBay." And he went absolutely white.
Watching you.
He went absolutely white. Like, okay. So yeah, so that's how I learned about eBay anyway. So
so what was your first book?
The first one that I actually published was, I'm just going to look here. I've got one on the shelf. This is a long time back now. Oh, actually, yeah. There was one before this one, but I haven't got that on the shelf anywhere. Oh no, there it is. There it is. First one I actually wrote. I can't remember whether it was that one or that one actually. So there's 2 here that may have been the first one I published. I can't remember which way round it was. But the first, this one here, Writers to Watch. What happened was that I was asked by the library service in Portsmouth if I wanted to take part in this was in 2012, which was the bicentenary of the birth of Charles Dickens in Portsmouth. And they said, you know, we're encouraging new writers and modern writers to give talks in and just readings in local libraries. And this was at a point where Portsmouth had a very, very limited, muted writing scene. It was really, really very kind of
it's
low.
Gone crazy now, isn't it?
It's gone crazy. It's gone absolutely mad. But back then, it's like no one had any confidence to just get up in front of an audience and do stuff. So this was a sort of exercising, a confidence building exercise, and it was called Writers to Watch. And what happened was that we were all asked. There were 20 of us were asked to select a 12-minute reading from some of our work and do that. And we did it all around Portsmouth in different libraries. And at the end of it, all these writers came to me and they said, we love doing this. Can we do a book to celebrate it? And I knew nothing about publishing really. And but I sort of I knew enough to know that I could do this. So I went, yeah, okay. So I got funding for it and basically brought out Writers to Watch. And it's there are not many of these around.
Is it funded by the council?
It was funded by the council. Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, there's not many of those around, but you know, it was a really interesting job basically to do. I mean, what it's got in there is it's got writers like William Sutton, you know, Sutton, who went on to be internationally published. It's got Amber Lee Dodd in there as well, you know, and she had those massive hits later on with the children's books that she writes. So it's got like the very first printed writings of quite a few authors in that. James Law, J.S. Law, who did the submarine thrillers as well. You know, right. His very first stuff is in there. So it's a really interesting thing, really. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah. And these ones, I mean, I've got a handful left, you know. So, but if anyone wants one, then they need to just email me via my website, and I can dig one out. They're not even listed on the books for sale. So, but if
I've seen them on your stand when you do a market.
I have them out there. But then there was this one, The Three Bells starring We'll Meet Again. That was really, really important for me because that one, basically what happened was I met these three girl singers who were at Portsmouth University, and they were extraordinary. They did like World War II harmony singing, and they were perfect. And I saw them do this gig, and I just went, I love them. I just think they're extraordinary. And I asked them, can I do a short story about you? And they're like, yeah. You know, we had a meeting. They wanted to work out that, you know, they wanted to work out that I wasn't some kind of, you know, so some dirty old perv, but you know, so they obviously weren't very good judge of character because they said yes. And so I wrote that, and it's basically a ghost story set in World War II, or partially, and in the modern day. You know, it sort of tells us.
And is that set in Portsmouth?
Yes, absolutely. And it's set around the theme of it is the bombing of the Guildhall during the Portsmouth Blitz in 1941. And that was all during that vintage time, you know, when it was all very innocent and people were dressing up, and I was, as an RAF officer, and going out and just, you know.
Yeah, I remember. And you had that kind of that sort of act you did, wasn't it, as their manager or whatever, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So we did gigs, and you know, and it was great performing with them because, you know, we took shows all around the country with me as their kind of as the kind of love interest of one of the girls who hated me. So it was really, you know, there was a lot of humor in it, you know.
Right.
So yeah, and that was great fun. And then after that, I just basically I thought, oh, you know, sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, what's interesting is that a lot of what you've written has been based around Portsmouth. Is that because you feel like it's a nice market, or is it because you just like doing it because you're from Portsmouth? And that?
Right. Okay. I'll tell you something about this. Right. When I started doing like short stories, I'm sorry, I give long answers, don't I? I'm going to try and keep it short.
That's all right. We're not getting a lot of comments, so we're all right.
I sent them all to sleep. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, what happened was that, I mean, I wrote my first book I started to write when I was 6. It was just diabolical.
When you were 6?
Yeah, it was diabolical.
Oh, this is a bit like, and then the dinosaurs came.
yeah. Except this one was Journey to Venus, or Journey to Jupiter. It wasn't Voyage to Venus. It was Journey to Jupiter.
That wasn't Portsmouth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it was, you know, the dialogue, I can remember some of it. Ian. Yes, said Fred. Yes, said Ian. Yes, yeah, Ian. Yes, Fred, said Ian. How far is it to Jupiter? It's a long way. How long will it take us to get there? I mean, basically, it was the sort of dialogue that I had in the back of the car when we were going on holiday to Cornwall.
Hey, look, if you were 6 years old, you can't be too critical. Let's face it.
I think it's brilliant. Are we nearly there yet? Yeah. That would have been later on. But
that sounds like a 6-year-old.
Yeah. But anyway, what happened was that, you know, as I went on, I tried to write stories and wrote stories, but I never felt they were convincing. It's like I set some in Ireland, I set some in various places, and I could never find the milieu that was right. And when I moved to Portsmouth again, when I moved back, I suddenly looked around and I thought, actually, this is a self-contained world here. It's an island. It's got all these different extraordinary parts to it and all these different people. And this makes a great setting for, for all sorts. And so that's what I do is I started writing, strange and unusual stories set in Portsmouth, usually with a ghosty kind of feel, but not always. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the press gang thing. Has that ever entered into your stories?
Not
I think
yet,
it's just crazy. They're over by Spice Island and they just get effectively kidnapped and chucked on a boat. I think that's amazing.
Absolutely insane. There's a really interesting story about a woman innkeeper over in Gosport, and she basically the press gang came in and she basically fought them off herself whilst the punters ran for it. She fought off the press gang. I mean, you don't mess with Pompey and Gosport women, So yes, really, really interesting stuff. There's another story about there used to be, I mean, it was sleazy Portsmouth in the 18th century. There used to be a woman, I've forgotten her name now, but she was a mud wrestler, and she would wrestle down near Spice Island or on Spice Island, in the mud, and she'd take anyone on, and anyone this
still there
Marine,
now?
This Royal Marine soldier took a shine to her and got a bit over friendly with her. Mistake. She ended up breaking his leg, and he lost an eye. I mean,
wow.
you don't mess with these women.
That must have been a double whammy, because the eye and the leg is probably nowhere near each other, unless, well, I suppose it depends on how hectic the fight was. I suppose your eye could be near the leg. Yeah.
I mean, really. So yeah, I mean, extraordinary. So the press, but the press gangs are crazy. I don't know if you know it, but Spice Island was called Spice Island because it was actually separate from the rest of Old Portsmouth. There was a moat that run down across Broad Street, and what would happen is that there were a load of pubs around there, and when the press gangs arrived, they'd just jump out of the windows into the moat and get swept out to sea and then swim to safety. And anyway, the press gangs worked this out. So what they did was they put a net across the exit of the moat into the sea, and basically all these guys jumped in and then got netted and pulled out. Isn't that terrible?
Amazing. Yeah.
So because of that, all those amazing stories in Portsmouth. Yes, you're right. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I started setting stories here, because it's just so rich. Rich.
So one of the things that I definitely want to talk about, because I know there's people that I know on BookTube that are interested in them a lot. So you've done a lot of research on the history of Arthur Conan Doyle's connection to Portsmouth, haven't you, in Southsea?
Yeah.
So
and that's because basically what happened was, when I started looking into the history of the town, I suddenly realised that there's a whole whack of really, really important authors who spent time in and were influenced by Portsmouth. So obviously Charles Dickens was born here. That's a kind of quite well known. Arthur Conan Doyle lived here for 8 years, and it's here that he creates Sherlock Holmes whilst he's living in Portsmouth. Another one is Rudyard Kipling. He grew up here between the ages of about 4, 5 and 11, and he hated it. He had a really bad time, but that actually feeds into his later work. And the other one which is interesting is H.G. Wells. And he was here for a couple of years working as a draper's assistant. And this is where he takes hold of his life. At the age of 16, he realizes that if he doesn't start taking charge of his life, he will be stuck in drapery for the rest of his life. So that's also, I mean, all of these stories are really interesting in their own way. But Conan Doyle's one, and there are others. I mean, in the modern day, you've got, back then as well, you've got George Meredith, who was a kind of second tier author, but he's the guy, and he was born on Portsmouth High Street. He was so embarrassed of having been born in Portsmouth that if anyone asked him where he's from, because he was a bit of a snob, he'd say he was from Petersfield, because he didn't want people to know. Because I mean, it was a rough town, man. I mean, it was seriously rough. And so there are others as well. But I mean, modern day, obviously, probably the most famous is Neil Gaiman, who was born in Porchester but spent all of his summers in Southsea as a boy. And so, you know, he's connected to the town, as you know, because you had that signing at the Ocean at the end of the lane, which is a road in Portsmouth.
Yeah. And he came in, and obviously they created a road for him as a tribute, which is pretty cool. And it's
amazing.
such a weird bit of road that it's almost like a bit of genius. They thought, oh, we could do that, you know, because it's like
the Ocean is at the end of the lane there.
Yeah. Well, it literally is. Yeah, and it's a tiny lane. It's like, I don't know. It's only a few yards, isn't it? So,
it's about 20 yards.
Yeah, man.
But
you we're going back to Conan Doyle in a second, but you did do something small about H.G. Wells, didn't you? You wrote something about H.G. Wells, is that right?
That's my current project. So,
it's your current project. Right, okay.
That's
so
really
let's finish with H.G. Wells. Let's go back to Conan Doyle then. If that's your current one, let's go back to Conan Doyle. So, tell me more about you, because it was like unpublished stories, wasn't it, that you wrote that you found?
Yeah. Have I got one up here? Yeah. I might as well turn to look at this mighty tome. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that lovely? I'm going to say that because I designed the cover. So
it's a lovely cover. It's very good.
You just said the right thing. So that's really good fun. I mean, I'm really proud of that plus this is the hardback version. It is in paperback as well, but I'm just really proud of that. It's a really nice thing. But the story behind that is that whilst he was living in Southsea, Arthur Conan Doyle wrote a whole load of short stories. And many of them went into collected editions. So, you know, you've got the Captain of the Pole Star is one, which is what a collection edition. You've got various ones, but then there's a whole load of stories that never went into collected editions. In his early days, he sort of forgot about them, and they appeared in like Pearson's Magazine, Pall Mall Gazette, Boy's Own Paper, this kind of thing, and then were never reprinted. And it's like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. So I thought most of those stories, you know, because there were, I started looking at all and trying to find all of the uncollected stories of Arthur Conan Doyle, and there are 30 in total. 3 that he wrote before he got to Portsmouth, 20 that he wrote whilst he was here, and another 7 that he wrote after he left. But most of them in some way, well, what they do is they sort of show how his writing develops, and also how Portsmouth really, really influences that writing. So it's really fascinating because he was working in Portsmouth as a GP. That's why he came here. Just to put, people may not know this, so I'll put it in context. In 1882, in June 1882, he had a huge row with the partner at the GP surgery that he was at in Plymouth. The guy called George Budd had like severe paranoia issues and was deeply dishonest. And Conan Doyle just thought, I can't work with this guy anymore. So he just packed up one day and got on the steamer from Plymouth and arrived at Portsmouth in June 1882. Got off the steamer and started his life here. And he moved into a place called Bush Villas, number 1 Bush Villas in Elm Grove, Southsea. And he had £10 in his back pocket when he got there, and he couldn't afford a servant. Poor thing. So I can't afford a servant. I had to lay my one off. But he couldn't afford a servant.
I've got 15 of them. Yeah.
You've got 15. I've got 20. So. So I mean, he used to do things like he would clean the brass plaque outside the front of the surgery where he set up at night, so that no one could see that it was him doing it. And he used to cook because he didn't have a cook either. He didn't have anyone to help out. And as a gentleman, this was tough at the time. He also didn't have anywhere to cook. So what he used to do was there was a gas mantle for the lighting, and he used to cook on a pan. He used to do bacon and eggs over the gas mantle, which I think is just a really extraordinary story. So he was on his uppers basically, and he couldn't get clients in easily because you weren't actually properly allowed to advertise back then if you were a GP. So he started writing more stories. He'd done 3 already to supplement his income, and that's what you get with these ones. These early stories, and they are fascinating. And what I really love about them as well is that the style is brilliant. It's like, even right on, I mean, I'm so jealous. Right from the start, he knew there's a few things that he knows. One is he knows how, like, people's fascination is evoked and inflamed, and he knows that, like, you know, so he's really good at mystery. He's also really good at the thing, the object that is the matter of obsession. So, you know, jewels and diamonds and, you know, treasure, you know, all that kind of stuff, because that just appeals, doesn't it? You know, so these kinds of themes, and then what he did is he wrote all these different stories, and they were comedies, they were wild west adventures, they were thrillers, the supernatural, horror stories.
Were they set in Southsea, or were they just like?
Well, some of them were.
You could just recognize the sort of kinds of areas or descriptions of places. You thought that sounds a bit like Southsea.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because he actually did a load of stories called the Birches Pool stories, and Birches Pool is his name for Southsea. So that's all Portsmouth, you know. So Birches Pool is actually, you know, there are 7 stories in the book, and he actually wrote a whole novel called the Stark Munro Letters, and that is also set in Portsmouth, but in this thinly veiled Portsmouth. So you do actually get insights into the life in the town through this, you know, this extraordinary, you know, the stories that he's doing
in the 1880s.
Yeah, but also not only those, but you also get things like, for example, he sets one story in a fictional Scottish village, and that's fictional Scottish village he calls Rudmoor, and you know, there is no Rudmoor in Scotland, but there is a Rudmoor in Portsmouth. So he uses names like this, you know, for different places around. He's even got a character called Pompey, you know. So is that from General
Pompey? Had a lot of affection.
Yeah. You know, so was that from General Pompey, or was it from the nickname for Portsmouth? Who knows? You know, so there's all sorts of stuff like this, but there's also stuff, for example, in 1883, he writes a short story called The Winning Shot. And The Winning Shot is a supernatural thriller. It's set in Dartmoor in a big country house, and it's got a big dog in it. Sounds familiar. So he's using those ingredients that he's going to later use for the Hound of the Baskervilles right there in this short story. It's also got, and it's fantastic, this terrible, awful Victorian supervillain, a guy called Gaster. And he's a genius. And you're kind of going, oh, he's a genius and he's a supervillain. Oh, okay. We've got a proto Moriarty there as well, you know. So it's really fascinating. The very, very first story he wrote, actually, was never published. And it was sent to Blackwood's magazine. They put it on file. And the editor wrote "Show's Promise" or something like this on and then put it in file. It was never published. And that was when he was about 18 or 19. Anyway, Blackwood's then folded in the, I think, the 40s or the 50s. And the archive was then given to the National Library of Scotland, where this original manuscript of an unknown short story by Conan Doyle was found. And it was first published, I think, in 2000. And this is the first time that story has appeared in a collection. So, you know, that one's a real coup. That's many thanks to the Conan Doyle estate for that. They've been brilliant with me.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So you got in touch with them presumably and worked with them on getting permission, and did they get involved in how you were going to present the stories?
No, they just gave me free rein. They said, off you go, no problem. So you know, but they've been really good. They're fantastic, the Conan Doyle estate. And I should say, you know, that one of the things that they've also done is they've given me a little bit of funding towards Holmesfest, which is coming up in February, which is a celebration of the life and times of Arthur Conan Doyle in Southsea and his greatest creation, Sherlock Holmes. And that'll be a night at the Square Tower on the 18th of February. Tickets will be 15 quids. But what that's meant is that with their funding, I'm able to like take the risk out of the hiring of the hall and paying the performers. And it'll be basically a kind of like a night like the good old days. I don't remember that show in the 70s and 80s. It's kind of a music hall night, basically. So we'll have different acts going up and performing different things. So that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun. Those tickets will be going on sale in the next couple of days. So, yes.
That's awesome.
But I love it. Conan Doyle's amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's fascinating because I know that people will probably, even if they know something about Conan Doyle, they probably don't know some of that stuff you've said. So that's brilliant. So you're now working on a H.G. Wells project.
I am. I'm not sure I can talk about it too much at the moment because I'm still sort of working it through. But what I will say is I've got, Jim Al-Khalili, the Radio 4 presenter who does the Life Scientific. You don't know him. That look on your face says no. Okay, so he's for people who aren't ignorant, he's quite well known. Just saying. I'm so mean to you. I know. He does stuff with Brian Cox. I know
Brian Cox.
Yeah, Professor Brian Cox. He does stuff with him. So
the actor, right?
You're bad, aren't you? So so he's done the foreword for this. So that's cool. But it's a book about it's reprinting some of H.G. Wells' stuff, and it's also got biographical stuff about him. But I'll give more detail about that because I haven't done the Kickstarter yet. And
right,
and I really want to get
it funded by Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, I'm going to get the Kickstarter going on it because it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, but I can't really focus on that until I've got the Homes Fest out the way. But that's the current project.
Have you used Kickstarter before?
Yeah. I funded this with Kickstarter.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and that was amazing. Neil Gaiman thankfully retweeted this for Kickstarter. And so did Joanne. And so did Joanne Harris. Chocolat.
Yeah.
So she retweeted it, and that was just fantastic. And I got about $7,000 on Kickstarter for that to fund the first print run. So it was really amazing. 6,500 actually, I think. So so that was really cool. I mean. But let's be really clear about this. For me, I mean, you have writers at lots of different levels who are doing their own path and going down their own way, and some of them are just starting out, and that's cool. And some of them are, they do it in their spare time and they've got a job, and that's cool too. And some of them want to be, successful writers. I do. I want to be a successful writer. And some of them are quite happy doing what they're doing. For me, this is a full-time job. I publish stuff. I've published about 20 books, and you've seen them on the market store. And that's what I do. And for me, it's a very specific thing. And the advantage of me having Portsmouth as my outlet is that I set up in a market stall in Portsmouth and I have all these Portsmouth related books, and people go by and go, tell me about my hometown. And it's find out here. Amazing.
I don't know if it's universal across loads of cities, but there is a lot of sort of, I don't know if it's the right word because it's so local, but patriotism in Portsmouth. Their hometown. There's loads of it in there, and people are so like, you're in Portsmouth,
it's got a real strong sense of identity.
Yeah, you put the word Portsmouth on a book, and that's it. They're like, "What's that?" Isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I can't remember her name, but there's Bryony in it. Bryony, I can't remember her surname, but she does those books about the Pompey girl, and she's written about 3 or 4, but the words Pompey girl are in all of the titles.
And
that's clearly it's a bad thing, isn't it?
Is it Bryony Best?
Yeah, Bryony Best. That's it. Yeah, and they're really successful. And if they didn't have Pompey girl in the title, they wouldn't be. No,
I mean, she's done a really clever thing. She's managed the crossover between local and national, and good luck to her. Really. Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think they're about mental health as well, which I think is very prevalent and important and kind of current as well in it. So I think that's part of it as well. But it's definitely a very. Go on.
Oh, I should give a shout out because I met her at Portsmouth at the Portsmouth Authors Collective, who meet at the Sirloin of Beef every month to do readings.
I need to go because I'm part of that, but I don't go to the Sirloin of Beef. I need to go. Yeah.
You're only around the corner,
Matt. I've written stuff, right? I've written stuff.
I know you have. You're a great talent, huge talent. Not only,
I need to go to. Hey.
So I was saying not only the written word, the song, the gigging. I mean, come on, amazing.
Something like that. I can make a cup of tea as well.
Well,
is
that an offer?
That's probably the most important thing I do.
We'll have a tee
off.
Look at this. Look at this. I've even got the themed. That's one of mine as well.
Nice.
The themed Snow Witch mug. So it's like, you know, I'm just like, I'm living the kind of like slightly dystopian dream, man.
Well, actually, let's talk about the new one, because you talked a bit about the H.G. Wells one, which you can't talk about too much. But let's talk about Weird Tales from the Island City, because that was recent, wasn't it?
Yeah. Let me grab that one. Hang on. So,
because they're all set in Portsmouth, aren't they? But they're short stories, right? With a kind of
they are. So here we have the rather gorgeous hardback. That's nice, isn't it? And and this is the paperback. And basically with this one, what happened was, you know, I said that I was having trouble finding the kind of like the milieu that would work for me. I mean, this ties in with what I said earlier, which is that I wrote one story originally about 30 years ago set in Ireland, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. It wasn't convincing, and it nagged me for years. And I would go back to it and I'd rewrite it and I'd rewrite it and I'd rewrite it, and it just wasn't right. And then this year I decided I was going to do a collection of some of my short stories. And I thought, you know, I wonder whether that one, and I went back to it and I had reset it in Portsmouth. And suddenly, so I had a clear, you know, I cleared my mind of it so that I didn't have a full memory of it, and then read it again and thought, oh, this really works. This is you know, it's in Portsmouth, it works. So that's the first one in there, called The Tourist, and that's a supernatural horror, you know, one of those set up in
I just smell that.
What? Yeah, like that. You've got to do the mouth as well. So
it's just tons of vowels.
It's terrible. That's set up in Portchester. But what I do is I've got all these different stories. I've got they're all weird tales from the island, because of course Portsmouth is an island. That's the other thing. It actually really is an island.
We're connected by 3 motorways, aren't we?
Yeah. Yes, and also water. If you try and sail your boat across the motorway, you get into trouble, man. And I just kind of thought, you know, that's what I'll do, and I've collected all these shorts that I've done over the years and it's the first time I've done a collected short stories, and they're strange and unusual. And the last one is a novella. So some of these are like 1,500, 2,000 words long, but the last one is a novella. It's 30,000 words, and it's called Song of Miss Tolstoy, and it is funny, I have to say. I didn't realize it was funny, but I started reading it. I'd forgotten, basically, because I wrote it a few years ago, and I started reading it back before as a candidate for the book, and I was just going, this is really sly, this is really silly, and actually quite deep and dark at the same time. We'll have that. So that one's in as well, and I really love that one.
It's funny if you don't read something for a while. I mean, I have to read my last novel because I want to write the sequel. And I keep putting it off just because I know that once I get going, I'll have to concentrate on that and not do anything else. So I've kind of put it off a bit, but I really can't wait to write it. I've got the plot. I know what I'm going to write as far as the structure and what happens, pretty much. And so it's just writing it, but that's when the fun begins, because all the jokes are in it and all that, and then you're kind of ripping off the situation. And I actually can't wait to read the previous one again, really, because I was laughing while I was writing it. So, stupid song titles and the band are on tour, touring an album called Wet and Tasty. That's the album that they're touring, and they're like, you've got to go around all these different planets touring the album, and it all goes wrong. But the next book is about them splitting up, and it's going to be 2 plots, and one of them is really silly, and the other one is a bit silly. So
I've got a question for you then.
Go on.
Which is, I don't know whether you cover this before, maybe you have, but different writers have different approaches to plotting and to story planning. I remember speaking to James Law, when he brought out Tenacity, that first submarine thriller that he did. And he's one of these guys that really plots quite intensely. So sort of every plot point, everything is noted. And then it's basically a question of filling in. And other people, I know Pete Adams, you know Pete? Yeah, he basically just puts pen to paper and just goes, and he doesn't know
Oh,
where it's
really?
going.
No planning at all?
No planning.
Wow.
No planning. Where are you? What do you do?
I'm somewhere in the middle, so I don't even start it until I feel like I've got several incidents that make up a beginning, middle, and end.
Right.
You know, so if I've got an idea that I'd like to use, that's just an idea rather than a plot, right? And it hasn't got a shape. But if I feel like, okay, and usually I think of it as chapters, because I think, well, that's going to happen. And when that happens, that's probably 5,000 words.
Right.
And then when that happens, and if there's like 13 or 15 incidents or changes in the plot, then that should make a shape. That's kind of the way I'd see it. And then once I've done that, then I'll go, right, now let's write those things. And then, you know, sometimes it changes as you're doing it, you know.
Yeah.
I remember when I was writing my short stories, which was the first book, I loads of times the ending changed, and it was like, and I just thought, oh, well, hold on a minute, this needs to happen. And it wasn't what I originally planned, but it was like the characters were talking to me saying, well, I'm going to do this, you know. And I was like, okay, you know.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic when you get the characters talking to you. It's just it's just like, wow, like the sense of just being.
And also sometimes it's not even the characters. Like the last story in that first book, I leave it on a cliffhanger, and I wasn't planning to do that. I was wrestling with it, going, right, what do I do now? And then I just thought, well, hold on a minute. The best way to finish this is to kind of have the character going, oh, I'm screwed. I don't know what to do. And then that's how I end.
I love it. I love it. It's so. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say that ends up being not only how the story ends, but how the book ends. And I think it's quite funny.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So your picture is just. Oh, okay. I was going to say your video just froze for a minute there. I just thought I'd mention that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, come back on again. Yeah, I mean, I find it really interesting because when I was writing for the bill, you know, that discipline of having to write, what you do is you go through 3 stages. So you'd submit a premise, and the premise was about 200 words, and it lays out, you know, the main themes of the story and the characters involved. So that's the first thing. If they like the premise, they then commissioned a storyline, and the storyline was about 8 pages of A4. So, you know, probably about 2,000 words, something like that. And that basically was every scene, you'd very coldly kind of go, DC Carver walks into the room, or DC Carver discusses with WPC Ackland this. They decide this, they go here. And that would be basically, you know, every scene would be done that way. So that obviously when the script unit is looking at that, they can go, okay, this is a coherent story. Everything in it works and all the interconnections work. If that was green lighted, that would then go to script. You had 3 weeks to write this, to write the script. But that discipline of having, you know, this 3 stages was really useful. And that used to be my model for writing until I wrote The Snow Witch. And basically what happened when I did The Snow Witch was that I'd met this woman on Palmerston Road. She was playing violin, and with her partner playing guitar, and she was amazing. She just had this presence. She was just so amazingly kind of just wonderful to just watch, listen to. She just had genuine charisma. And at the end of her playing, I just went over to her and her partner, and I said, look, I just think you're really interesting. Can I buy you guys a coffee? I'd love to hear about you. And she's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we just went and had a coffee, and I just asked them a few questions about themselves. And their story was that they were from America. They were from the Appalachian Mountains. And and they were in Britain, and they're in Portsmouth, waiting to get the ferry to go over to Europe. And their intention was that they were going to busk all the way around Europe and earn their living busking all the way around Europe. And
awesome.
They were good enough to do that for sure. I mean, they were fantastic. But there was this lovely light breeziness to her, which was just wonderful to be in the presence of, you know. And you know, you meet those people, you know, like you, Gareth, like you, and I just she wouldn't get out of my mind. And so I thought, right, okay, I'll I'll write a story. And my intention was to write sort of like Joanne Harris's Chocolat, you know, this kind of quite, in some ways, whimsical story about this creator who arrives and changes Portsmouth, changes the town. And what happened was that I wrote this first section, and for some reason I had her arriving in the snow. And I had no idea what I was doing. It was just like, you know, just writing the character really and describing the character.
So you're already inventing the idea that Portsmouth gets snow.
Right. Yeah. It does sometimes. Very rarely it gets snow. But this is, and indeed in the blurb, it's in a freak snowstorm. You know, I've got my face covered there. And then what happened was that I wrote sort of probably about 15,000 words of this intro to this book. And then put it down, and then I came back to it. You know, I said to you earlier that I suffer from depression from time to time, and I had this really, really dark moment that I had to get out of. And I then went back to the Snow Witch whilst I was in this really terrible like mindset, and the Snow Witch was my therapy, and
helped you out.
It got me out of it. And basically, what happened was that the story became much, much darker. I don't know if you've read it, have you? I don't know if you have.
No, I haven't. It's in the library.
Yeah.
So you know, although I should buy it, shouldn't I?
I don't care. You know, it's like, you know, do what you will, but people say it's, you know, it gets in their heads, you know. But you know, she just took over, and the story itself just told itself. There's a major twist at the end, which relies on loads and loads of stuff at the beginning. And what happened is I'm writing it, and I get to this moment, and I went, oh, that's why that happened at the beginning. I had no idea why I'd written something at the beginning. It was like it was all tucked away in my unconscious, waiting to come out at the right moment.
Yeah,
it was extraordinary.
I've done that before, where I've written something like that, like a twist or some reference to something. I didn't even know I'd done it, and someone would go, "Did you do that because of that?" And I go, "No." Hold on. Scott says hello. I'm going to say hello to Scott. Hi, Scott. Or Becky, but probably Scott. Nice to see you, mate. Thanks for popping in. I mean, that's the good thing as well, isn't it? So writing Snow Witch gave you that focus and took you out of yourself, because ultimately depression is like a form of self-involvement, isn't it? So there's that book let you think about something else.
Yes. I mean, it's blighted me all my life, you know, and it's why I'm a writer, I think, because I can't hold down a job. That's the reality of it. There are some days when I just kind of go, I'm not getting out of bed. So, you know, and that's just how it is, you know, and I that's what I deal with. It's okay, you know, but it's funny, isn't it? Because I worked in the self-help industry for 10 years. I worked with Paul McKenna and a guy called Richard Bandler doing hypnosis stuff, and I was their copywriter for 10 years, writing advertising copy. And I've got no idea what I was going to say. I've forgotten.
Is it that you work with them, but it still didn't help you?
Well, I think there is some of that in it, which is that, you know, you see all of this, you know, with Paul McKenna and these guys, you know, they really do help people. But there's also this moment where you kind of go, actually, this is, I know, that's what I was going to say. So with those like trainings, like a lot of it's personal development, and it's all about, you know, what is it that you want to be? What do you want to be? Who is it that you want to be? You can be the best you, and this kind of stuff. And it's like, that's really great. But actually, all I want to be is someone who can just get on and find a place where I can operate normally. It's not like I want to be the CEO of kind of megacorps, you know. Megacorps is weird, isn't it? Because it sounds like a huge dead body floating in space.
Megacorps, yeah.
Megacorp, that's the other one. So yeah, you know, I don't, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm going to master the art of being like, you know, top league footballer or the big CEO. All I want to do is to be able to find an environment that I can operate in. And that's really what I've done with the writing is that this mode of being is something I can handle. Which is kind of
actually, I mean, it's funny because I do think it's quite a serious thing, quite a big thing. I genuinely want this YouTube channel to be a positive thing.
Right.
I do stuff about books, I do stuff about music, but I do these videos now and again. I did one recently a few days ago, which is me trying to say, be positive, try and find the thing that makes you smile, don't be hard on yourself, all that sort of stuff, because I think, even if it becomes a bit repetitive, I think it needs to be said. There needs to be people out there saying that kind of thing, because people can get so wrapped up in negativity so easily.
Yes.
And I did as well. I mean, I've managed to get out of that, so I don't really feel like that, but I did for when I was younger. So I totally relate to it. And I think it's really important to try to kind of drive yourself away from that kind of thing as much as you can.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also there are also, because the problem, even in that language, there are problems, which is, drive yourself away from it, blah, blah, it's like, even that is kind of setting yourself a task, which you may then feel that you're failing at,
Yeah.
How depression operates.
One of the things I said a few days ago is trying to make the most of the days you have, as in, if you're feeling rough, you're ill, or you're tired, or you're not motivated, try and set your expectations low, but try and still enjoy the day somehow. Do something that will make you smile, even if you watch a silly clip on TV or something, or something that, or you contact someone that will make you laugh, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? You can kind of recapture a day sometimes, even if you're feeling rotten.
I do. I get that. I mean, I think the other thing to do is not to tell yourself that if you aren't doing that, you're a failure, because that just that kind of just adds more to it. I've got to say that over the last couple of months, I knew that I was slipping into a kind of low patch, and I really, because as you get older, you begin to identify, oh, okay, I've got that feeling in the stomach, and that means that my concentration's also going, and I know that, and you know from experience. Whereas when it first happens in let's say you're in your teens or your 20s and it's happening to you, you feel, what is this that's happening to me? I'm falling into this.
You're powerless, aren't you? When you're younger, you're powerless. You can't control it the same way at all.
So, well, it's because it's not familiar. It's not it's like nowadays that darkness is a familiar friend. And it's like, it's not one that's particularly wanted, but it comes and visits from time to time, and I have to in some way accommodate it. But what I did find is that when I felt this coming on this time, I just thought, damn it, I've put on weight anyway. I'm not moving physically enough. And I just signed up at the local gym. I went to the pyramids, not the actual pyramids, the ones in Portsmouth. And I signed up with BH Live there, and I'm paying, I can't remember what it is, I think it's 40 quid a month. But because I'm self-employed, I'm about a 5-minute cycle ride from there, and I cycle down there, and I do, today it was circuit training, yesterday it was Ashtanga yoga, and I do one thing a day, and it makes such a difference. It's extraordinary.
That's cool. That's good. If it makes a difference up here, that's really good. I
Yeah.
was a little bit worried when you said you put on weight, because I imagine you didn't really put on much weight, and you might have been freaking out over something that could have been quite small. But it does make a difference if it's making a difference up here. So that's cool.
Well, I mean, it was enough for me to go, oh my God, I can't fit into my clothes anymore. So that was an issue. Yeah. It's like, can I afford to buy a new can I afford to buy a new wardrobe? Or should I use that money on BH? Yeah, on the gym. So yeah. So, but I mean, it's cool. I mean, that's just how it is, isn't it? With some people.
Yeah, and it's and the fact that writing can be a help for you and a positive thing, that's a good thing as well, because it has a long-term effect. You have a product at the end of it, and that can make someone else feel good and enjoy it, and you know what I mean. So that's a good, because in some ways that's better than other people that might have an escape or an answer or a solution to that's not long term and doesn't have that effect, and they have to keep finding it, whereas you've got something and you create something, and I think that's pretty cool.
Although I tell you the other buzz that I get, and this is this is not something which I think a lot of writers will identify with, is that I really, and you've probably seen me on the market stalls, I love selling. I absolutely love selling. When I'm on the market stall and I've got my stuff there, I'm really proud of it. And there's people coming by and I'm just like, yo, let me tell you about this. And this is what I do. And, you know, the passion sells the books, you know.
Yeah, but I don't think that's surprising, because I've been selling CDs like in person for years.
Yeah.
And I've had a little bit of success now and again at the market stall with my books from the Portsmouth Author Collective.
Right.
And, you know, so I do know what it means when someone says, "What's this? Oh, this looks good." You go, "Oh my God, it looks good. That's fantastic." They said the words, "It looks good," you know, and then they buy it and they give you money for it and they walk off and you go, "They're going to read that." You know? Come on. And you just think, "Well, that's awesome. That's the first one. Someone's going to buy 20 in the next 10 minutes." You know, and clearly.
But I mean, you know, but that is the attitude. You know, it's a really nice thing, and I love it. I just love it. The other thing that's amazing about, you know, being a Portsmouth writer is you get into this place where people say, "Oh, you know, oh, that's Lamport. Let me tell you about what happened when I was a kid there," and you hear all these amazing stories from all these people. You know, so I have a notebook with me on the stall as well, and I'm just like jotting this stuff down because it's fantastic. It's, you know, so that, and I mean the other side to it as well is that, I mean, it also helps me find out immediate feedback from customers as to what they want. So I'll give you an example. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. So a few years ago, I worked with the University of Portsmouth, and we did this Dark City, Portsmouth Tales of Haunting and Horror, which was great fun to do. What kept happening was people would pick that up and go, "Oh, okay, oh, that's fiction. Have you got any real ghost stories?" And I'm like, where will I find real ghost stories? So I went to the British Newspaper Archive and looked for anything supernatural, paranormal, unexplained Portsmouth, and found all sorts of crazy, weird shit, man. And on the back of that, I then brought out that. Mysteries of Portsmouth.
Mysteries of Portsmouth. And
that's a hoot. That is a perennial seller. People love that. It's all about, you know, it's about ghosts and hauntings and legends and all sorts of stuff like this. And that stuff, you know what I said to you earlier about how Conan Doyle really knew those things that really excite people's imagination. Well, that was my guiding light for that as well. Mysteries of Portsmouth. Full of all those kind of like mysteries and strangeness and you know, a little bit ghosty and supernatural here, and it's got sea monsters in it and apparitions and all sorts of stuff, and it's just like people see that and they're just like, I mean, even the title, Mysteries of Portsmouth. Ooh, what's that? You know, and so that's because of the feedback of selling on a market stall. You know, it's great. So
well, I mean, Groundlings Theatre is really haunted, isn't it? And supposedly, and people love that aspect of that theatre. They love the fact it's haunted.
Right. Absolutely.
And people love that kind of thing, you know. So absolutely,
when I was a rare, go on.
No, go on.
Okay. So when I was a rare book dealer, one of the things that would happen sometimes is that people would call me to their house, and I could almost guarantee, you know, if it was depending where it was, because there's also like issues to do with like there's class stuff to do with this as well. I mean, sociologically, book dealing is really interesting because you get into all of these different kind of like cultures. But I could usually turn up at a house, and if it was like a certain type of house that, you know, sort of very ordinary, normal type of house, having had the conversation with them, I could guarantee that there would be a shelf or two shelves of like supernatural, paranormal, unexplained. You know, it's huge. That market is massive. And all horror, you know, but a lot of supernatural, paranormal, unexplained stuff, and it's, you know, that is a really big market to tap into, and that also was what the Mysteries of Portsmouth was about that, you know, people love being tantalized with the idea that there's something beyond what they know.
Absolutely, well, and the horror fandom and the horror, you know, the horror community is huge, and very passionate, and you know, there's a little bit of that in our little corner of BookTube, and it's just cool seeing, like, because there's lots of championing of independent authors as well, and, you know, all sorts of different types of horror, and, you know, weirdest stuff will get celebrated. You know, it's awesome.
Who do you go for?
We've got a question from. Say again.
I was going to say, who do you go for? Who do you go for on the horror line? Yeah.
I quite like. I suppose I'm not so much into ghost stories, so I think I probably like sort of thriller type horrors, maniacs and werewolves, maybe vampires, that kind of stuff. I like that kind of thing. I'm looking into some of the newer authors lately. Although one of my favorite authors, like my joint favorite, because my two favorite authors are Ray Bradbury and Richard Matheson, and Richard Matheson horror stuff. So I love him. So yeah, that kind of thing. Scott's asked you a question. So it says, "Hi Matt, where is the best place to purchase your books in the States?"
Oh, that's a great question. So a lot of my stuff is on Amazon. So do have a look there. If you're struggling with that, then come to my website, which is lifeisamazing.co.uk. I'll say that again, lifeisamazing.co.uk. And there's a store there that you can buy from. Of course, postage to the States, I try to keep it as low as I can. But of course, obviously, there is it's cheaper to buy lots and lots of books rather than just one, you know, because obviously the postage is higher. But yeah, a good starting place would be Amazon. But if there's certain titles you can't get on Amazon, then look at lifeisamazing.co.uk, and we have a shop on there, and I'll get the stuff out to you. And and I will. Yeah, the postage is reasonable. Let's say that. So you know. So yes, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we could leave it there, Matt, if that's cool, because I think we've covered a lot of your books, and we had a little chat on that.
Have I talked your hind legs off, mate?
No, it's all good. Here we go. We've got another comment from Scott first. Hold on. My favourite horror authors are Michael McDowell and Algernon Blackwood.
Algernon Blackwood. Oh my God. Oh, do you know, I've got him on my shelf to read at the moment. There's a short story I read when I was 15 or 14 called The Willows. And
yeah.
You know that story?
Yeah. It gets anthologized a lot.
Oh God, man. So I read that story. It was my brother's horror book, and I read it just because I wanted to. So maybe this is an argument in favor of kind of like having adult and children's books. But you know, but frankly, what happened was this. Okay, I started reading it, and I could feel the creeping fear in my body grow and grow and grow, until by the time I got to the end of it, I was an absolute wreck. I mean, I was just like terrified. It was late at night, and I crawled in under my sheets to go to sleep, to hide from the night. I was just so frightened. And my bed.
The Willows is the best.
Fantastic. And the bed started to shake. It was as if someone had taken hold of the bed and was going like this at it. They weren't. It was me shaking. I was so frightened.
Wow.
Just incredible. And I woke up the next morning and I was just like, wow, that is just incredible that, you know, that he was able to freak me out like that way. It's a fantastic, I love Algernon Blackwood. What a great writer. So yes, I tip my hat to you. The bookish Bryants. Absolutely.
Yeah. You've chatted to him on screen. So when I did the big 1,000 sub celebration, and we did that long one, and lots of people came in and out. Yeah, you chatted to Scott that night. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right. Got you. Yes. Well, nice to see you again. Or nice to hear from you again, Scott. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Matt, for popping in and talking about your stuff.
Thank you so much.
It's been cool.
Yeah, it's been great, Gareth. Actually, and we must get together and have a pint sometime, because we haven't we haven't got together and had a just a good old chinwag for ages. So we must do that. I'll come to I'll come to a gig sometime. We'll just maybe have a chat. But then when you're doing that, you're always busy anyway. So you know.
Yeah. Like to go out like separately is quite a good idea. We can proper have a chat, can't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we can meet
please
up
come
at
to my gigs, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't come to my gigs.
Maybe I should. Maybe we should meet at the Sirloin of Beef sometime. Actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's around the corner, isn't it?
Literally. Yeah, 2 minutes away from me.
And you know, or come to the Portsmouth Authors Collective. And
well, I keep saying I will. So yeah.
I might know.
It's a wonderful, but yeah. Just give me a nudge and I'll come down. It's a wonderful bunch of people. And I'm so grateful for Laurie for setting it up. I'm going to get Laurie up. Laurie's up for doing it. That we're going to have a chat like this as well. And she can talk about all the Portsmouth Authors, which would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, she's really into it. She
put so much effort into it.
She's a nurturing influence, and she is really, really what is needed. She's great. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It encourages you to write, because I wrote slower when they were just out on Amazon and nobody ever saw them. But because I can physically sell them myself, it makes me want to keep writing. Do you know what I mean? And that's the market source she puts on. You know, it's brilliant.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's that's the inspiration, and it's that instant gratification of, okay, I've done this, and now I've seen who's buying it, and also entering into dialogue with people. I get people coming back going, "What's the latest? I love your stuff." I had one guy actually say to me the other day how he really had. I mean, this is like me blowing my own trumpet, I know, but he said, "Oh, you know, I really admire what you do, because you really support Portsmouth and show all its history and and it was such a sweet, nice thing to say, and that when you're working alone, writing in your room, and you can't really do otherwise than that, to have that input makes it so worthwhile, you know."
Yeah.
It really does. It's really fantastic. So yeah. Anyway.
Scott says thank you. Thanks, Scott. And I think it's for the other few people that have been here, because we have a few people in here that have been quite quiet. And originally, the reading is the breathing was also reading is like breathing, which is awesome. Seeing it from where was it? Aruba. Yeah, from Aruba. Yeah. That was awesome. But yeah, thanks a million. And keep writing comments on the thingy if you look at this on the replay. But thanks, Matt. We'll end it there.
Brilliant. Thanks, mate. I'll see you again.
See you later.
Take care.